for Chris at
Yeah,
WC3.
so we're going to record the chat with me and Evan and Pablo. Hi, Evan.
Hi.
Hi.
Evan's wearing red, Pablo's wearing black. That didn't work. So there's a couple of things. So Evan and Pablo have got their own testing pages that they've been using in their type design projects that are underway at the moment. And then additionally, Evan has been doing some experiments around vertical metrics, which is like a kind of half design, half technical issue that seems to me like it should belong in the DDT project rather than in Font Bakery, at least initially, because this is kind of like a visual check that you need a human to do, and in theory we could have a computer do it, but at the moment we're not there. So, so Evan, can you turn on the screen sharing and then show us your testing page?
Yeah. So, for instance, actually, let me turn on screen sharing first. That'll help. Okay. And looks like it's working.
Yeah.
And now I'm switching over. So, for instance, this is 150% of the UPM, and I've used a very large font size, 200 or pixels, so that we can see precisely what we're getting. And we can see that the second bar, because each of these is each of these strange sort of shapes that looks a bit like something from an 80s video game, is a bar that sort of means something. The first bar is 125% of the UPM. The second bar is the bar that's being tested. And then we have additionally these blocks on the right, a block above and a block below. And they're there to see if something gets cut off. If you can see those little blocks, you know that nothing's getting cut off. And if you don't see the bars, then you know that something has been cut off.
Mm-hmm.
And this shape for testing is, I've thought of a better way of doing it, so I'm about to update it. But what we're seeing here is that in Chrome, the latest version of Chrome on the Mac, that the entire glyph is being shown. It's not cutting off at 150% of the UPM. It's actually more permissive than 150%, which is an outstanding result. This is like, you know, very, very happy making. If we go to something else, we go to Firefox, and we put in the same URL. Whoops.
Whole thing. Whole URL.
Okay. Let's try it again. There we go. We can see that in Firefox, we're also getting the blocks showing up on the top and bottom. It's actually more permissive than 150%. Again, that's a really wonderful result. It looks to me like the blocks above and below are getting cut off slightly, so it's not exactly the same result.
You put them side by side. You just move the window to the side.
Yeah. Yeah, so these top blocks, they look a little bit shorter to me. Mm-hmm. Although it may be a question of the scaling, because the way that Chrome scales the font and the way that Firefox scales the font is not identical. So it may be an illusion. It may actually be results. If we go to Safari, I'll go ahead and create a new window for that. Paste in. Then we're also getting this very, very permissive, better than 150% result. But if we now go to Windows, and we go to, let's see, okay, yeah, this is Firefox. If I put this in, and again, it's the same URL, what we're seeing is that the first block at 125% is visible. The second block appears to be intact, but the blocks on the top and the bottom, they're getting cut off in Firefox. If we then go to Chrome, we can go to this same URL. Actually, I'll just type it in. It's faster and better. Right, so Chrome in Windows 7 is also very, very permissive. And so then the question becomes, okay, what happens in XP? So I'll go back to my OS emulation, and I'll start up. Where is it? There we go. I'll go ahead and start XP. And we probably want to test this in Ubuntu too. I haven't actually done that yet. So if I go to Firefox, and this is going to be an updated version of Firefox. Oh, okay, there we go. Looks like it's updating itself again.
Yeah, it looks like you're on version 29. 30's out now.
Right. All right, so I'll go ahead and use that version for now. And if we check it, so then we see the little blocks are getting cut off again. The thing that we don't know yet, because of poor test design, unfortunately, is it getting cut off precisely at the top, or are we getting something where it's actually cutting in a little bit more, or what? So I need to redesign my test glyph to tell us more. But the thing that we don't know is where precisely we're getting things cut off.
Yeah.
We are getting more inconsistency.
So actually, my suggestion for this is that we use triangle glyph shapes.
Exactly. That's what I was going to go to. And actually, I was going to make a triangle, and I was also going to make a little ruler with little numbers indicating what's there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I figured out a way to build it in Illustrator, bring it over to FontLab, and then build the new glyphs. So yeah, I've got, and so then here is the Chrome result. And so again, we're getting this kind of cutting off. And so it looks like maybe we could get 150% of the UPM in the new version of Chrome. Certainly, we're not limited to 125%, which used to be the real limit. And so I was thinking that it would be wonderful if we could find out, what do the browser makers say the limit is, and to what extent can we convince them to give us a definite support for, let's say, 175% of the UPM or something like that. Mm-hmm. Not so much for support of Latin, but to allow support for other scripts to be more robust, because it could be quite important for a variety of scripts.
There's a few fonts like Tangerine, which are scaled really small.
Yep.
In Latin, which would benefit from this.
Yeah, there's I think a wide range of populations that would benefit from having a standard vertical metrics level of support, and also to have a more permissive one. So to have the browsers that are running in XP, behave more like the ones in let's say Windows 7 and 8, and so on. Yeah. Okay. But anyway, so we'll keep on banging on this and see what we can figure out for ourselves. But yeah, I'm excited about the possibility of more inclusive the support for more different scripts as a result of having more vertical space to play in.
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of kind of people's font designs, then we can kind of run these technical checks and say, like, have you got a glyph encoded at this private use area Unicode value, with shapes in it, and then if so, then present these tests, this test document, and then the questions that you're asking for are, do you see these top blocks being, cut off or not?
Right, and also to if we change the glyph design for that's being used for the test, then we can also indicate precisely, like hopefully within maybe even one EM unit, and see just precisely where it's getting cut off, and to be able to document that across a variety of browsers and operating systems.
Right.
Use a diamond shape instead of a triangle.
Yes, that's what I mean. Yeah, like exactly. You put triangles on the top and the bottom.
Yeah.
So this is kind of something that you want to test on mobile as well, and so and be able to find different browsers from different operating systems there. And so this is where the drag and drop from desktop becomes not so useful, because for this kind of test across devices, you want to be able to kind of load something into the system. So that suggests that it wouldn't be 100% client side, and maybe it would have like a font upload aspect to it.
Yeah, I think in the longer term, it would be worthwhile to be able to have something that's like a font dragger, where you can drop your font in and see if it's breaking anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be very valuable.
Yeah.
There's also there's some other variables that may be worth testing, and I probably can't do all of those variables efficiently because it's just too many variables. It's the kind of thing that should probably be programmed. So what I'm hoping is that having done this sort of limited set of tests, that some of the other tests that are possible and maybe worth doing might be programmed and automated. So for instance, what I've been doing is I've been holding the baseline at sort of the same, with the same descender value, and only increasing the ascender value. And so what I have not done, for instance, is push down instead of up, which would effectively sort of move the baseline within the UPM. And so that kind of change is doubles the number of tests that we would need to do. I don't, frankly, expect to see a change, but if there was a change, that would be important to know. And so I think that kind of thing is probably worth doing. There's also the different values that we're changing. So, for instance, I've been using the orthodox Google method, where the OS2 values, the HHEA values, and the win values are all identical. There could be variations in those, and they could yield different results. And that's actually, that's a huge number of variables to add into the mix. And we could say, okay, well, we're just going to, we're Google, and we're just going to stick to the standardization that we've evolved, where they're all the same. But from a research point of view, there might be some value in playing with those in some other way.
So I believe Adam Torlott was telling me that he thinks that you can have different values, which is maybe something like the Adobe built up recommendations for their application. But it's important that the sum of the vertical metrics and line gaps match.
Right. I think that it's if you're going to include a line gap, because the Google standard is to have a line gap of 0.
Exactly.
And so one of the variations that we could play with and just see if it makes a difference is to be more accurate in the statement of vertical metrics, and then have a bigger line gap, and to sort of put it in that way and see if we get any benefit, or if there's a real problem with it across browsers. Because that's something that we in the early days we created this one standard, and it worked for us, but it would be good to just check in and see what happens. And then also to go back again to browser makers and say, this is what we found, and would you mind if you changed the following standard, and here's our reasons why.
Okay, so do you have other testing documents that you've been developing for your Devanagari fonts?
Yeah, I can go ahead and get those happening instead. So these are, I've been testing some private fonts and some public fonts. This is a font that we developed ourselves. Whoops, hey, where did that go? Okay, yeah, so I guess that one. So this is one of the tests that we've been running. And it shows a mix of different shapes, and it gives a kind of overall texture. And in terms of the browser, the size 60 doesn't matter very much, because this is not going to be the size that we're going to see text at on a regular basis on a web browser. But if you're designing for the phone, you tend to design for larger sizes, and especially for Devanagari. And so, but we have a range of scales, so we can look at 11, and we can look at 14, and it's always the same text. And then we can also type something in. In this case, the font that's being tested has no Latin, so you can't see what I'm typing. but it had these are the features that we've got. And so the reason I've done it this way is that a lot of the really wonderful tools, like the tool that Pablo made, for instance, and also the tool that Vernon made, these are really great tools, but they rely on having a desktop environment. If you've got an old Android phone, it's not going to work. So what I can do on my Android phone is I can go ahead and open up this web page, and I can click into an individual test and take a look at how it looks on the phone without having to drag a font within an operating system, which I can't really do in my old Android phone. So it's kind of a hard-coded test, pre-made test.
And so if you go to one of those test pages, let's say the again.
Okay, so should I go to 30 for this? This is a semi-condensed.
Sure, anyone, yeah. So when you're looking at this, what are you looking for?
Well, I'm looking at a bunch of different things. I'm looking at the overall texture, whether it feels even. I'm looking for rendering artifacts. One of the things that I've seen recently is that some of the fonts, when they're set at 13, for instance, 13 pixels, the headline or the line on the top of the Devanagari character will actually jump around. It doesn't stay static. And so I'm looking to try to figure out, one of the things I want to figure out this week is that kind of an eccentricity in TTFA, or is there actually a mistake in the font where that's happening? Maybe there's a 1 unit difference on the character in question.
Let me check my email right now about that, because that's something that Rob Keller has found with TTF Auto.
So, for instance, this is Valmiki, and so this is somebody else's font, and we're going ahead and testing it, and this is the 14, and then we can also go to the 46. Oh, this one is not opening up. It's the 48, and so one of the things that we tried to do in our design process is to go ahead and take advantage of the fact that some people have already been doing this, take advantage of the fact that Dave bought a bunch of fonts for Google, and that these were available to test very easily. And so we tested a big range of these things in order to find what we thought were sort of optimal vertical metrics. And it's in the process of doing that, I started to have a conversation about vertical metrics with Joanna and realized that she didn't know about the fact that things could get cut off, and that she had just been looking at the ITF standard. She'd looked at Adobe Devanagari, and she assumed that these were safe values to play with, and that's how we ended up having kind of a UBM conversation, and that's sort of the relationship between the two. Okay.
So yeah, so I just double checked. So there's a problem with TTF AutoHint if you are misplacing your OpenType feature layout. So the language selector is really important, because TTF AutoHint, if you place like a Nukta substitution rule in the Latin script, then the TTF AutoHint will get really confused, and it will hint those Nukta glyphs with a Latin vertical metrics. It's metrics with, like, vertical ranges, like blue zones, essentially, that it's detected. And then it will shift those glyphs up or down to Latin, which is...
Even though you selected Devanagari as the script that you're using.
So in the command line, or in the interface, you say Latin with fallback Devanagari, and then that means that for the glyphs which are associated using the language system with Devanagari, applies Devanagari blue zone finding algorithm.
Huh. Because the way that I've done all of the tests that are here in this area of this URL, all the tests here have been Devanagari with no fallback. Because I thought that would be the safer thing to test with, but it's interesting that you're describing a different.
Well, it should work identically, right? At the moment, if you have a Devanagari only font, then you give all the hint that the main script is Devanagari.
Yeah.
If you have a mixed Latin Devanagari font, then you tell TTF all the hint that your main script is Latin and your fallback script is Devanagari, or the other way around. The main script is Devanagari, the fallback is Latin, and then that means that it will use whichever you selected as the main one for default.
Yeah.
And then where the script is specified, then it will use the appropriate one.
So, but I think that the particular bug that you're describing shouldn't be relevant to these fonts because they've only been hinted with Devanagari.
That's right.
Yeah. Or it could be relevant because it's sitting in the. I don't really know what TTFA would do if it's just Devanagari only. I'm thinking about it a bit more. I'm not sure we know what it would do if it found.
You will have to specify the Deva algorithm as the main.
Right. But even if you specify the Deva algorithm in TTFA, if TTFA finds the mistake you were describing in the OpenType feature, my question is, what will it do in that case?
It will apply the script algorithm to the glyph.
Hopefully.
Well, it will. I mean, that's what Rob found.
Oh, okay. That if you indicate Devanagari only, then it solves that solves the problem.
Yeah, it should do.
Okay, that's interesting to know. Although ideally, yeah, you want to be able to include nice hinting for both things.
Okay, so going back to one of these documents, so you check out one of the documents.
Right, now these later documents, they use a limited set of glyphs. So if I click into this, you can see that there's a very small character set that we're using, and these are characters that we're using to start thinking about the sort of the personality of the typeface, and also to look at rendering for a small set of shapes. Because with the earlier tests, for instance, if we go to let's see, like the low hit, for instance. This has got a lot more different glyphs in it, and so yeah, I went ahead and took some of the text that was in Pablo's test, and sort of copied it and pasted it into my own document, and so yeah, here it is, this particular mixture, and where we were testing already made fonts, like the Noto and the low hits, then the character support was there, and it was safe to do that. But for our own purposes, then we have a smaller glyph set for the early part of the design process.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this particular set of glyphs, I think we'd have to ask Pablo about why he's chosen this test versus and this set of glyphs versus something else. In the case of the glyphs up here, then yeah, this is a set of glyphs that has been recommended, and I'm not actually sure by who, as sort of a meaningful subset of shapes. Some round and some pointy and some boxy.
Yeah, I think maybe it was Aaron. Okay.
Yeah, this may be.
So in terms of making the user interface for the DDT project,
yes,
it seems like you want pretty small margins, pretty big type, and you're kind of looking at the texture. What are some of the kind of specific questions that you're asking yourself when you look at this?
Well, I guess in our case, because we were very concerned about trying to design for phones, it was important, apart from the question of having static pages that we could open, there were sort of two other sort of type design kinds of questions. We wanted to find proportions that were effective for phones and for low resolution, and we're finding that sort of unsurprisingly, almost echoing what Matthew Carr did with Verdana and Georgia, that the larger you can make the main forms, the more that you can compress the other ones, the better performance at nominally small sizes. And there's some trade-offs there, and you have to sort of find a nice balance. But that's one of the things that we're trying to figure out. And so the most recent round of typefaces that have come in, as of actually today, includes a lot of vertically stacked Devanagari
But
characters.
that's
So
not this. What in this document? What are the questions you asked about this document that's in front of us right now?
So in terms for this document, the content of the text is mostly about this question of interrelatedness of shapes, the different kinds of shapes, the round shapes, the pointed shapes, the semi-flat shapes, and the genuinely flat the shapes with the returns in them, the knots. We wanted to see the relationship of these things, and also to see the relationship of the spacing, whether the spacing is good. So that's what's going on here. So that's sort of the first thing, and you can see that across the variety of different sizes. But what we're finding is that it's quite important to be able to see things at a variety of sizes. In other words, being able to see, okay, how does this look at, I don't know, 30. This is probably the size that it's going to get used on the phone a lot of the time, from what I've seen of the websites, the news websites that use Devanagari. But we wanted to see, okay, can we get down to 20? Does it work? How small can we go and sort of make sure that it continues to work? Because we wanted to create as robust a design as possible. And then, it's nice to also look at it at large sizes to see, okay, if somebody does use it at a large size, what's that going to look like as well? So I think seeing things at a variety of sizes is quite important. And this, I mean, the design of the test is, I think the things that we're testing for are things we definitely want to know about. The way that we're accessing them may not be ideal because this was just done, very sort of off the cuff.
Okay, so
Hi.
one of the sorry, Pablo, go ahead.
Yeah. If you can see this tool, the filter text, if you use a bigger size here, you only see the size you have selected. But if you put something smaller than 20, let's say, I don't know, this is size, you get a preview in each size.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, you type this is size pixels, and you get this is size 15, 14, 13. So you can test every size at the same time.
Right.
And this text.
Yeah, I mean, it would be possible to. It would definitely be possible to show multiple sizes on the same document. And I think one of the things that I don't like about the test that I've built is that I don't have the opportunity of comparing two discrete elements. So, for instance, let's say I wanted to look at Noto Devanagari at 36 and a Devanagari that we're developing at, let's say, 20. Because there's sort of...
It's not very difficult. Let me show you. Devanagari fonts. Noto. Where is it? Noto sans. Noto Devanagari. Regular. Okay. So let's say you want 40. This is my phone, and this is not.
So now, Pablo, we're not. I'm not seeing your screen at the moment.
Why not?
And you paste it.
I don't know.
It's
So
maybe I need to stop screen sharing in order to see.
Yes, maybe.
Okay. I can do it again. So
right.
here are the glyphs.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Are you seeing it?
Yes, I am.
Yes.
Okay. These are the glyphs that you have done at the moment. Okay. So then you check to use the Devanagari dictionary.
Yep.
Then you choose this size, any size you want. For example, this. Let's use, I don't know, 40.
Right.
And then you drop the two fonts that you want to compare. For example, my font and Noto here.
Right.
Then when you are in Noto, you select something and copy. And then you go back to your font and paste. See? And then you see the two fonts. This is
Oh.
Noto, and this is
Side by
Cat.
side.
You can also
Right. This is genius stuff for doing stuff on the desktop, but what it doesn't do is allow me to do it on the phone.
now this is on the desktop. You can also, for example, add the bold,
Yeah.
and you copy, I don't know, a few words of the bold,
Yep.
and then you go to the regular and add the bold here, and you have the regular and the bold. So this is Noto, this is the bold, and everything else is the regular.
Wow.
You can also check, for example, letters having, to make word having any particular letter, or having
Right. So in
two
terms
letters.
of making this into a in terms of making this into a feature request for Chris to design, then what we want to be able to do is to design a typographic layout like this, and then to kind of snapshot it, save it, and then to be able to go back to the page on a mobile and see exactly the same page.
Yeah, that would be good. Or, I mean, another way to do it is to open up a page and be able to point the page at a URL where the TTF is being hosted, and say, show me the font at this in this directory, and show me the font of this other directory, and then perhaps to have some pre-made text that would come up.
I'm sorry, Evan, have you looked at the wireframes?
Have I looked at the wireframes?
Yes.
No, I don't think I have.
Okay. So Pablo, let me.
Yep.
If you turn off your screen sharing.
Yes.
Sorry, Evan. I thought you'd seen this, and then you should be able to see my screen sharing.
Your screen.
Okay. So if you go to testmyfont.com, you can see that we've got a user journeys document and a wireframe mocks page.
Oh.
I have seen this.
And so the wireframe, so the user journeys.
Oh, this I've seen.
Right. So the user journeys document explains how things should be working, and then the mock-ups actually, provide a mock-up implementation of this. And so where you see the where you see the yellow dot, it means you can click, and then that it kind of interactively steps you through these different wireframes.
Right.
So when you first load the page at the moment, the idea is that you have to name a family and click Save Family. There's some introduction text that explains about what it's about.
Yep.
You name a family and you click Save Family, and then it shows you this family card here. And you can see that you can change the size of this from looking at glyphs to headings to paragraphs, similar to the Google Web Fonts browser. And you can search for font family names. You can change the text of all of the boxes in this input. You can edit them directly. You can change the font size, other things, and there's compare and test buttons. So the steps in this is you would click this and rename the family, and then you be able to click Save. You can add fonts, and then you get a pop-up where you can either drag fonts in or upload them via a URL.
Right.
And then you'd be able to specify either a Google Fonts URL or a GitHub URL, like directly to the file.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could select fonts on your computer and drag them in, and then it will upload, spin, spin, spin.
Right.
And then you get this family, and you can upload more fonts by going to the menu and adding more fonts and following that process. And where are we? I got lost.
Okay, yeah, you're cycling through the same thing again.
We see on the sidebar where we are.
Yeah, it's good that the sidebar is there.
Yeah. So you can remove fonts from the family.
Yeah, you can manage the families.
Right, you can manage a family. You can make a new version, and it'll ask you to copy the tests, and then you create a new version of a vector called latest and rename your previous version v1. And then you get these two versions, and so then this will allow you to compare those versions. So as you're developing new betas, you'll be able to either copy the test answers from before or not. Does that make sense?
You can copy the test. Which is it?
The test answers.
The test answers.
Like if you've tested this family,
Yes.
and you've said these tests that I've passed are good,
Yes.
and then you copy the family to the latest version,
Yes.
then you either want to have to redo those checks,
Right.
or you want to say, I know that they're good, so copy the tests as well.
Oh, the test results indicate that these have passed.
Right.
I see. Right, which is more sort of font. It's less a font design thing as it than font management sort of thing. But yeah, very valuable.
No, that's absolutely font design. If you have tests for looking at the serifs, and then you've changed some stuff that has nothing to do with the serifs.
Right. Okay. Then you want to indicate
test the serifs.
Okay.
But you might want to. Okay. So so in terms of selecting families, then you can select a family and then select another family, and then the compare button is enabled. You can search and find results or no results. You can switch it, glyph view. You can minimize them so that you can see many more families. You can have a headings view where you see lines by lines. Minimize that, and graph views as well. And then when you enter comparison mode, then you select some families you want to compare. And you can cycle through the styles in the family.
Mm-hmm. I'm very struck at the amount of Chrome or sort of boxes that are present here. I think there are places where this kind of thing is absolutely necessary, or is very probably necessary. But I think where we're actually looking at the fonts themselves, the actual test samples that are being evaluated, having all the Chrome around them is detrimental and sort of distracting.
Well, I mean, yeah, this is a wireframes. This isn't so much. I mean, that is an interesting point.
Yeah.
It's not too important though, because the point is about how it works, not what it looks like.
Yeah.
So these have got grey boxes around them. That's a visual design
to indicate that it's a thing.
Yeah, and all of this, this is taking a lot of screen estate at the moment because it's being made using drag and drop sample widgets.
Yeah.
But this could all be made, within something like, I don't know, a couple of centimeters of screen estate.
Yeah.
So you have a toggle mode, and so you can click between the two fonts that are selected in these drop-downs.
Mm-hmm.
and then it will toggle them, and that's very similar to the way that Pablo's page at the moment works,
Yeah.
where you have this toggle at the top, and you click, 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 click. Okay. And then you can change the families that you're comparing. Yes. So then there's an opacity where you can run a slider and fade from one to the other.
Mm.
And then there's a mask where you can run a slider across them.
Right, by way of sort of seeing differences.
Yeah, and this is in the Google Fonts directory. So if we get cabin and Meriwether Sands and did review and then compare, then we can do this opacity.
Hmm.
So you get this kind of almost animated impression
Yeah.
in one for the other. And then you can also switch it to a red-blue transition.
Yeah.
And so then when you set it at 50%, then you get like a kind of X-ray experience of how these are different.
Right. I'll be very interested to make this a part of the design process and see, what insights come out of that.
Right.
Because I have some ideas about what that might be beneficial for or not. But actually doing it would be instructive.
So as you develop your own font, you'd be comparing Cabin, version 1 to Cabin version 2.
Yeah.
And so then having a pixel diff will become very useful.
Mm-hmm.
And that looks like it's the mock-up for this isn't so clear, but like if you had got a bar and the dollar sign, which was through the letters in version 1, and then was just the top and the bottom in version 2 with no through bar,
right.
They would make that really jump out as a difference.
Right. So this is, the thing that really struck me about this set of test tools is that it seemed very glyph-centric, and I think looking at glyphs is certainly extremely important. But yeah, I'd like to see a little bit more about what kinds of tests can be put in at paragraph level, and also just looking at things that might be instructive. So, for instance, if you have what are those things called? The little O and the little A that happen after in Spanish and Portuguese, segunda and segundo. Having a test that shows you, okay, this is how it's normally used, and sort of gives a little bit of context for cultures, or people who belong to cultures that don't use it. And there's probably some French typesetting conventions, Italian typesetting conventions for punctuation that are worth sort of pre-making, so people who don't know what those conventions are can see what the likely usage is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So that's so in my kind of textual description of this, and I said that there's a bunch of things that questions ask, and so this design at the moment has just got a comparison mode, right? So this is allowing you to do is have better ways of being able to compare versions of your font in development, or
right.
If you were saying you want to see Noto at 30 point versus your font at 20 point,
right?
And so that isn't really here at the moment. It's got a very, like you say, glyph-centric view. So this glyphs heading paragraph, device needs to be worked through in all of these comparison modes, because it's in this specimen mode here.
Yeah.
But then it's missing from all of these.
Right.
You've got the kind of comparison that you're making.
Yeah.
And you have comparison-specific controls for this, so you have the toggle or the slider or the slider, and then this one just doesn't have one. And then this evolution one it seems to me that
Yeah,
that needs to be maybe. I mean, that's for going through different versions of the family.
Oh, I see. Yes.
But that really doesn't need to be its own kind of comparison mode. That needs to be integrated into this, so you can toggle between all of the versions.
Yeah.
So that's font 1, font 2 needs to become something else for. I mean,
Right. If those were pull downs, then
you've got the version here.
yeah. Right. Those are things that you can pull down, and then you can choose the sizes and.
Right, but
And
with
then-
evolution, then it's not a pull down. It's something that you can quickly toggle, like cycle through.
Yeah.
So, and then yeah, the headings, glyphs, paragraphs switcher, needs to be true for all of these because you want to be able to toggle between paragraphs.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the comparison mode, and so then the test mode, which hasn't been mocked up yet, goes further than this, and we don't really have concrete stuff in the document for this. So, you've got the idea that if type designer wants to test a family, he's loaded. So he selects a family, he clicks the test button, he's taken away from the dashboard, and he sees a bar that shows him the overall progress of the family through the tests, and a list of sections he'll need to complete as part of testing. So, for example, shaping is a category, and this can mean long columns of words, one font per column, and a couple of correct control fonts preloaded in some of the columns. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And it would. I mean, it's long, especially if you can control what you're choosing as correct references.
And so that's basically what we have here.
Mm-hmm.
So you see, there's all of these different designs for how that glyph can be. Okay. So then these are the sections from Pablo's testing document, and these are some sections that Jerry, ideas that Jerry had suggested when I spoke to him initially about having him and Fiona and other people from Reading contribute to this.
Yeah.
Now I haven't sort of got the contract sorted out yet with them to contribute, but that is something I hope to do this year once we have something in place for them to work with.
Yeah.
So you selected the families, and then you start the test, and then you get a set of test document segments. And so in Pablo's case, an example of that would be like in the kerning section. You have these different segments.
Right.
And so of this, there's a bunch of questions that you can ask that are very specific. So with this, you would say, do any of the numbers appear more light or more bold compared to the others?
Right. And the other question you need to ask there is, well, the thing that I don't have in my test at the moment for print, and which I'm planning on adding, and which should probably be added to Pablo's test and also the test that you're doing is, are the numbers closer or farther apart than you're getting them in lowercase? Right. One of the things I've been noticing recently is that a lot of the fonts that I've been testing have the numbers set actually closer together than the lowercase.
Right.
When in fact they should be farther apart than the lowercase.
Right. And that's not really reflected in this test fragment, is it?
Right. Exactly.
So what would you need to do that? Like A, B, C, D.
You would need to set typical. Yeah. I mean, you could set them. What you probably want to do is have. I'm guessing you probably want to have dates or other kinds of numeric data that could be dropped into running text.
Yeah.
And so dates is sort of the obvious one. There may be others as well. So for instance, I saw 12 dogs running down the street, and you've got the 12 in there at 4 p.m. Yeah, exactly. This kind of stuff.
Yeah, you can go to Latin 2 and select the numbers tab.
Is that the tab that's 2 over to the right?
Which one?
No, N1, N2.
Ah, it's over. Yeah, there we are.
Yeah, there are a few.
Right. These are some of the ones that I built into my my print test, and I sent to Vernon. I guess Vernon sent them over to Pablo.
Yes, I stole that from you.
Yeah, that's good. That's why I sent them.
Yeah.
And also with currency symbols, yeah, as is here. But I think these are very abstracted, and I think having a little bit more running text around them would give you a better sense of whether you've got a nice balance, a comfortable balance,
Yeah.
Yes.
Or not. This is still a little too abstract to give you, I think.
Right.
Go to the
So what I see with this
Link.
font is that I see like the 4 is very dark.
Exactly.
Right? There's this band of white color here, and then the 7 and
Yes.
4 are creating this very strong line, and it should be an
Yep.
even color. And then you
Yeah.
can see that again in here. You can see the 4, this row is dark, and then there's these bands of 4 and 8 here.
Yep.
And then again, you can see that like at a bigger size as well. And so
Yeah.
then just that, this 4 needs to be adjusted very slightly to just
Yeah.
thin maybe the diagonal and maybe the stems or whatever it is.
And I think it's
Yeah.
all very well and good for us to have these tests and to have them available, but I think that it might be useful to write in perhaps gray text so you don't have to look at it all the time, some kind of explanation of what to look for.
Right. So I showed you guys there's this thing that came up to my attention this week, and it's a very nice little Google Web Font Explorer. And so it's for looking at individual letters, but it has a very nice little keyboard-driven interface. So if you click this, you get an overlay with the keyboard controls. And so it shows you that you can... how do you get out of it? No. There we go. You have to click the triangle. So you type the letter that you want to see.
Yep.
And then you press the left and right arrow to cycle through different font families. You can press up and down to make it bigger or smaller. You can press the numbers to change the color.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can hit space to get a random one. And so, yeah, it's a very simple, fun little thing.
Sometimes I think, because the corpus of fonts for Google Web Fonts is so big, that you guys should mount something for a Biennale somewhere where it's just like a big art project where it kind of does this kind of stuff. Just presents fonts and textures.
Well, so this idea though of being able to have the controls completely keyboard driven doesn't work for mobile, but it can help to get rid of that clutter of the user interface.
Yes.
So that's maybe something that Chris can consider. But the point for me was that you were saying you wanted to have so you have to have an area that asks the question, then you have an area that allows you to answer the question and say whether it's passed or failed and provide more information.
Right.
And then you also need examples of passing and failing.
That would be really good. Yeah, if you wanted to really do it super properly, then having a pass example and a fail example would be really good.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's see if this font's any better. This is just as bad. There's still that, the 4 is off on this. That euro is way too heavy. Yeah, that's not such a great example. I think maybe Josephine's might be more professionally done, or conventionally done, I should say. Still a bit heavy there. Let's see if they have like a goal. Yeah, same thing. Okay, let's go to Google OFL Weather. There we go.
Yeah, the 8 feels a bit dark in this one.
The 4 and 8 also
correct.
It's all right, but that's the kind of thing, where you'd say like 4 and the 8, typically can be a bit heavier, this is a an image, or ideally the font straight from Google Fonts of a good example. And for a really display font like this, then potentially the same thing may not apply. But you can see Pablo's Metal Mania. Is this the Pablo font?
No.
Nah. You did New Rocker.
Yeah, Brenda.
Yeah. So this is a display font, but it still has that kind of evenness of color.
Yeah, it's actually surprisingly good.
Yeah, maybe Ali Paul font. Also very good.
Yeah. One is a little light, maybe, but yeah,
Like a
that's the font choice.
Very even, very good. Yeah. Well, so that's kind of that's my idea, right? Is that you have the test document fragment, and there'll be a series of these. So this is like the numbers series where you're looking at the numbers, and so each of these things.
You also have the lowercase 1 and lowercase 2 tabs.
Yeah.
And
the other thing too is I was going to advocate for treating this a little bit less like a big Western style plate of food, and treating each thing a little bit more like sushi. I mean, some of the tests, for instance, the one that you've got up right now, there's no way to make this smaller and leave it meaningful. Well, I don't know, you could cut it up into 4 parts or something. But for the number test, for instance,
go to the tool section. Go to the tool section. And there you have the grid generator and connection tester. And you can input any glyph sequence you want and any size you want. You can also, this works with Unicode, so you can also input the Venagari glyph or Cyrillic glyph or whatever you want.
Yep.
Wow.
And the connection tester is similar, but it's different kind of combination.
Right.
This is everything with everything and the size.
Yeah. So
that's rather wonderful.
Yeah. So for this stuff, these are kind of like more advanced kinds of interactive tests. But they're still So I'm not sure how these kind of fit into how I'm thinking about this tool, because what this tool, the idea of the tool on the dashboard is that you have these tests that you've done, and you've got, it's very concrete, right? That how we've been talking today has been really glossing over the details and the step-by-step how it works.
Yep.
Right, that we're saying, well, this document, looking at the numbers, then you're looking for certain things here, and then you're looking for, there's like lots going on here that you could look for.
Yeah.
And so really making that explicit, and then being able to test the fonts is in a measured way is really the aim. Yeah,
and I think if we're presenting each of the ideas sort of one at a time within our this new structure that you're building, Dave, then I think that's going to be that'll be much more comfortable, I think, for the people that are using the tool.
Right.
Yes, but it's also more slow process to test.
It's true that I think you'd have to sort of load each one and then the next and the next, and there may be people who enjoy having everything on one page, so they can just sort of scroll around and find the thing they want. But I think, especially if you're a novice type designer, and I think this part of what Dave's looking for here is to make this comfortable for novices. It's probably less overwhelming.
It's not about novices. It's about seeing systematic.
Yeah, And I also think I find I've got these very dense tests that I've built for myself, and I built them to be dense because I'm printing them on a laser printer, and I don't want to use a lot of paper. But if the environment that I'm testing on is a screen, then there's no reason not to parcel them out and sort of to leave the thing visually less complicated and like sort of, I don't know, less of a pain in the ass to look at.
Yeah. And also, so what I'm trying to show you guys with Punch is this idea that I want this to be fast, right? That if it's slow, then people aren't going to use it.
Yeah, yeah. And Punch,
And
you can
so-
cycle through things very quickly.
And so I think that you can say the connection testing, you can create this big page, and then you run through each one, and you maybe you have to tap the ones which are passing or failing. Like you tap once for a pass, tap double or.
I,
You
David's frozen up.
You're shown all of the
Can you
failing
repeat
ones,
what you're saying,
and
Dave?
you've
Because you
got-
sort of froze up.
So let me do the screen sharing again. So
Okay.
in Pablo's page, you've got something like this. And so this desktop page, you're able to see all of this stuff, like on a big desktop, and that's great. But what about if you're on a phone? Then this page is going to become, like if I go to Firefox and then web developer responsive design view. Yeah, then at the moment the way this page is not going to work very well on mobile. If I'm looking at this on a phone, then this page needs to be designed in a way where you can scroll down and we assume that everything's working good, and then you click on the things that are not working good, and you keep scrolling, keep scrolling, keep scrolling.
Yeah.
And at the end, you say explain, and then you get a new list, and you just have each thing that you've selected as bad, and then you have an area where you can explain what was wrong with it.
Right.
And that this would be kind of co-desktop and mobile, so you'd be able to type on your desktop that page, having selected the things on mobile.
Right. The other thing too is, I think you were saying this before, but I just thought I'd reiterate it just to make sure that I'd understood what you were saying. If you were creating these tests on the desktop, if you went through and sort of said, okay, out of the 1,000 possible tests that we've got in the suite, I want to review this, this set of 10 things, and now send the URL to, send it as a link to my phone, and I can open it up on my phone, and it's all sort of pre-made, ready to look at. That would be really, really good. Because I think the other thing is, especially if you're on a phone, with the different kinds of the differences in latency and all the other things, being able to select a group of tests rather than having to go through however many there are, if there's 100 or 1,000, I don't know what it will turn out to be. Being able to select the things that you want to send, and also select the fonts that are going to be in those tests, and then to send that as a package to the phone to go through would be really great.
Right.
It's a lot to ask, actually. If we can do it.
No, I don't think so. I think that it's fairly straightforward to have, that you would set up this web app on your own server, or even have it run on your laptop, and then you have your phone on your Wi-Fi network, and you get a URL, like a short URL, so you go to your laptop /abcx23, and then it shows whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's so complicated.
Okay. Well, that's great. That's
and
really
if you
great.
set it up on a server, then you could access it.
I'm really excited.
So
That sounds wonderful.
So the concrete thing that Chris needs from us is to start defining the useful tests that you need, that the current tools are providing for in a way where there's no history, right? There's no. The way that it's done at the moment is that you have your betas in different folders on your desktop.
Yep.
And then you're handcrafting and managing the process of uploading the different pages with the different versions with their own test pages.
Yep.
And what you were looking for isn't being stored anywhere. Probably you're keeping notes about what to do on a pen and paper next to the computer. You know, and that this is okay when you're doing a 250 glyph Latin font.
Yeah.
But the scale of doing these non-Latin projects is that you have to test everything so much more systematically and thoroughly.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's kind of the idea, is that Pablo's done an amazing job, with Vern and you of making these testing web pages.
He certainly has. You're really to be commended, Pablo. It's rather wonderful.
And like the adhesion text web app is like the very first step in creating these kinds of things.
Exactly.
But the kind of the idea of having the proofing process in a more sophisticated, managed way. That's the whole idea of this project, right?
Now there's another level to this that we have not discussed at all, which may be outside of the scope of what you want to tackle right away. But for instance, if you're creating something from Metapilator and then you're creating different versions of something in Metapilator, you then create, I've now got these 10 fonts and I want to try them in different layouts and different combinations and look at the familial relationships and look at the kind of the degrees of separation and relatedness that I'm getting for complex typography. The complex typography tests, those are not here yet at all and not even referenced. And so, one of the things that I found really useful about, for instance, the tool Font Dragger is that I could go in and target a specific thing, H1 or body text or pull quote or whatever, if whatever the div dot whatever it happened to be for the pull quote, I'd go figure out what that was, and then and also using there's a couple of different ways to insert your font into a live web page, and so you could go to a news site or Wired magazine or whatever magazine with the Atlantic that you wanted to target, and you would go and see how would my font work in this magazine, and so having layouts, not necessarily from specific magazines or news outlets, but having text samples which demand complex typography in order to work, and allowing you to see how is the set of fonts that I'm working with Georgia, how's it working with Noto, or how's it working with whatever it is, to see about these kinds of relationships. That's I think the next level, and if that could get programmed into this set of tests, that would be genius. Right.
So I had the web developer to implement stuff. Chris is here, to make a kind of formal spec of this for the developer to execute.
Yeah.
But what I need from you guys is to start sketching out on paper or talking to Chris in a hangout about this stuff.
Okay. Which Chris is this, by the way? Because there's a couple
Chris Mahon. He's the interaction designer in London, but no one's ever met before.
Okay.
Okay, so this call has gone on a long time, and I don't know if Chris will be able to sit through it. Maybe we can close the call and then do another one that's more focused to kind of demonstrate how these tools are being used.
Okay.
And so then Chris can actually think about how to design the user interface for these kinds of tests.
Okay. Shall we have an interval of a few days, and then that would allow us to build some of the examples?
Yeah, that sounds okay. So let me just check on my calendar what days Chris is going to be working. So he's going to be working the next 3 days and Monday. And then
Okay.
he's not going to be around until Tuesday the 5th. And then he'll be on for a week.
Your first holiday is in 4 years?
Sorry?
Your first holiday is in 4 years or something?
What do you mean holiday for me?
You will have a week.
Oh, he was talking about Chris having a break, not
Okay.
not
Okay.
Dave having a break.
Yeah.
Okay. So, do you want to try to meet again on Thursday or possibly Friday?
Yeah, that would be great. So Chris is in the UK time zone. So it's 4 a.m. right now in London. You know, it's 11 p.m. here in Boston.
Yeah.
So, early morning our time is late afternoon his time.
Yeah.
So yeah, let me put something on calendar now. I'll just add you to his days so you can see that.
If it could be sort of 10 or like 11 or something like that, that would probably be a good thing.
Okay, so we'll say on Thursday.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, and so I've set up a specific meeting.
Okay. So I'll come up with some examples that have to do with specific performance of specific glyphs, numbers, punctuation, and so on, and show what, for instance, a relevant set of punctuation tests might be like.
Okay. So what I want to encourage you to do is to think about this in terms of not a variety, right? So the numbers tests, punctuation tests, those are very similar, I would expect, in terms of the sizes of type you're looking at, in terms of the kinds of questions you're answering, the kinds of answers that you'll need to input.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's that. Then there's like typographic documents where you're using a family of styles together. And that's a different kind of thing that you're looking at.
Right. So it's more the complex typography that you want me to think about, is that correct?
No. What I mean is that we need to provide a range of these samples so that Chris can think about the interfaces for them. So you've got mobile and desktop. So there's some things that you can test on a desktop you can't test on a mobile.
Yeah.
There's things at the glyph level. There's things at the sentence or headline level. There's things at the paragraph level, and then there's things at the layout level.
Right.
And so we need a couple of examples for each of those levels. And then Chris can synthesize from that the things they have in common, like changing the size of things. And then there can be a consistent way throughout the application to change the size.
Right. How do you maintain a consistent interface with those things that are common? Yeah, that makes sense.
So then there's this hierarchy of the test text. There's the questions that you're looking at the text for. There's the range of answers, and the pass and fail criteria.
And actually, I'm realizing as you sort of spit out this particular hierarchy, the glyph, line, paragraph layout, I think it's probably a good idea to be able to jump to sort of major strata. If you already know everything's fine at the glyph level, you want to move on to paragraph, or if you're not ready for layout, you really need to work out some things that are happening at the paragraph level to be able to jump into that group of questions would be good.
And there's this Latin process chart that we made a few years ago. Let me share my screen again. So there's this chart, and so you've got testing documents where you only have a few glyphs. We started looking at that for your Devanagari.
Yeah.
And then Pablo's got these pages for lowercase, uppercase numbers by acrylic. Yeah. So Pablo's got this very nicely ordered set of tests for these different kinds of things. And so technically it's possible to know what's in the font in the browser. And so only the tests that you can actually run can be, presented to you. Similarly, the browser knows what kind of browser it is, and so it can only show you mobile relevant tests on a mobile.
Yeah.
But we need the examples to work with.
I just thought of another feature that would be rather good to have.
Mm-hmm.
If the tests could be sent into PDF format so that you could then print them, if there was some, I mean, obviously, like from Google's point of view, not necessarily super important, but in terms of sort of making the tool more broadly useful, or even more broadly useful, that seems like it would be worthwhile.
Yeah. Okay. So that's true. So there's this document. You should have right access to it.
Yeah, I hadn't seen the new version of the font design diagram because it's been changed to the orientation and stuff.
Yeah.
I'd like to look at the new one. If you could send me an email with that, it would be great to look at again.
Yeah. Okay. So so I've given you guys edit permission on that document. Let me reshare that.
Yep, got it.
Okay, so let me share this. Okay, all right. So so that's kind of where the project's at. Chris has kind of got the comparison modes, a bit of work to do on that still. So when he's working on this, the next couple of days, he doesn't need the input on the testing like right now, but we're at the point where we need to be ready, making that ready for him.
Okay.
Okay.
Good. All right.
So I'll stop the broadcast and sign off. I've got to go to sleep. Yeah. Did I send you the modular catalog, Evan?
The modular catalog, that does not sound familiar.
Okay, let me do that. So okay. Okay, I've sent you the email with that shopping thing. Basically the modular font catalog is available for us to open source whatever we want. So we need to pick what we want to do. And then actually, Pablo, I don't think I've told you about this. So Vernon, it's been very up and down with Google over the years.
Vernon, what?
And so Google's funding has been up and down over the years.
Yes. Yes.
So when it was down, Vernon was developing his own fonts, like you did Encode.
Yes.
And he hadn't released many of them.
Because
he was hoping that things would come up with Google, and then we could, buy them, like we did with Encode.
Yes, and now he has that accident.
And now he's had that accident. So I'm going to go to California on Friday, and I'm going to try and access his computers and get hold of his unreleased work.
Yes.
And then the modular fonts have got very bad Latin. And
Yeah,
so
yeah, I see. You want to match the Latin with the Venerable.
maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. I did get this document. The first page loads some, variety of different Devanagaris, but then the next pages are a lot of them. Oh, wait a minute. It's loading correctly now. Oh, okay. Yeah, the first time I opened it, I guess not enough data came through and it didn't display correctly, but it is displaying now.
Okay.
Uh,
So yeah, I'll stop the recording now.